Okay, no, it is.
4 people into the waiting room. Oh, you're one of them. Excellent. We're working.
That's fine. I'm filled with fear when I saw that. I've had that myself on one of my meetings. So I'm so sorry to panic you, but I thought I'd better call just to.
No, I'm glad you did. But there's 8 people, so that's brilliant.
Yay, wonderful.
Perfect.
All right then. See you in a minute.
Okay, bye. Evening, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Just waiting for a few people to come in. We had a momentary panicked phone call between me and Nikki, like, oh, it's not working, but it is working.
It was. That's good. Sorry, Shelley.
That's all right. Right, just rename myself.
I'm just going to move because they've cleared the table I want to work out. I'll be back on in a second.
Have you in my house in a minute. I've just phoned and they're like 20 minutes away, so
yeah.
they'll be walking through the door. Right, and just see if anyone else is coming in. Oh, yeah. Okay. Any more? No more so far. Okay. Right, we'll get started then. This is, let me just double check, it is being recorded. So if you want to watch it back, or if there's any colleagues that you're working with that you would like to share this with afterwards, then please feel free. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name's Shelley. I'm from the Heart Sports Partnership, and I've got some colleagues on the call as well that are also from HSP and also Hearts Community Foundation. So before we go any further, if I just let other sort of coordination staff, do you want to all introduce yourselves, please?
I'll go first. Oh, go Nikki.
Hi everyone. So I'm Nikki. I'm the grants manager for the Happy programme. So sorry about that. We're just chasing around moving tables. So apologies, I was a little bit late to join.
And I'll go next then, because I'm Nikki's colleague and I'm new to the HCF team, and I'm working on the Happy delivery at the moment.
Lovely. And then our guys.
Hi guys, my name is Orla. I'm part of the Heart Sports Partnership Coordination team. Generally just any HAF queries, anything you need to know. And I'll hand you over to Lindsay, my colleague.
Hello, I'm Lindsay, and do a similar role to Orla as part of the HSP team. And then finally we have Joe.
Hi, yeah, it's part of the same team, so I won't repeat what they said, but yeah.
Lovely, thank you. It's really nice that we've got a few names on here. First of all, that we don't recognise, but second of all, that you've joined us for what we've decided to have as a webinar for new providers. So previously, we've always run one webinar, but from feedback, and you'll find as you get engaged with the project, everything that we do is very, very much based on reflecting on feedback. Is that it makes sense now to have something goes a little bit more in depth for new providers, and then we've got a webinar at 7:30, which is for those that have delivered HAF programs with us before, and some of the background isn't so relevant to anymore because they kind of know where the project is coming from. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen and share the presentation with you that we'll use to go through, and we'll just give you kind of a bit of a backdrop as to how things have come about if you've never worked with HAF before. Can someone just give me a nod that that's shared? Okay. Lovely, cheers, Nick. Okay, so as you probably already know, the Holiday Activity and Food Programme in Hertfordshire is known as Happy, and it's Hertfordshire's Holiday Activity Programme. And we've been running the activity session since Easter 2021. So we've just finished what is our 5th delivery period. We've done Easter, summer and winter 21, and we've done Easter and summer 22. And you guys are here this evening to understand what's required for you wanting to apply for winter 22. So as a little bit of a backdrop, this fund is very much to do with a response to Marcus Rashford. So you'll probably remember a couple of years ago, Marcus kind of calling out the government to say all of these children that get free school meals during term time, what's happening during the school holidays, who is looking out for them, who's making sure their tummies are still full. And the HAF programme is a kind of the government's response to that. It's funded through the Department for Education, and investment goes into every local authority across the whole of the country. So locally, it will be referred to as different things. As I say, in Hertfordshire, we call it Happy. If you go to Essex or Bedfordshire, you'll find a different local name, but it all comes under that umbrella of the HAF programme, which you can find more information out about on the government website. And the reason for it existing is because those 3 points that are there. So the children who are living in families on low income are much less likely to access organised out of school activities. So it means that come Easter, summer and Christmas holidays, these kids are more often than not stuck at home, probably without a garden, with very little access to anything that their peers might be doing. As a result, they're more likely to experience what are considered unhealthy holidays. And that's not only about them getting out and about, it's to do with their nutrition. Perhaps the food they're eating isn't quite the quality they would receive at school, and also their physical health. They're not getting the opportunity to move their bodies, which then has an impact on their mental health and their sleep and the family dynamic as a whole. It's really important, you know, to keep these kids moving and to make sure that they're expending the energy that they naturally harness. And also these children are far more likely to experience social isolation. And we don't necessarily mean just from their friends, although that's a bit of a given. We mean from services, from the outdoor environment, from other grown-ups, from sort of just the, you know, the general kind of community that they're growing up in, all of those things that they're not exposed to as much during the school holidays. To give you an idea of investment, the Department for Education invests 220 million into the programme each year, and in Hertfordshire we receive just under 3 million. A percentage of that is taken off of the top for coordination, but a large proportion, 90% of that amount of money, is used for delivery. And when we say delivery, that is the likes of you putting in your application form to Nikki and to her team, and then hopefully getting a grant and running your programme. That's what we refer to as our delivery pot. So in essence, HAF is aiming to achieve a lot of things, not only the things we've just talked about, but we want to make sure that children are generally eating healthily over the school holidays. So one of the core components of any programme that runs, any camp, any activity, is that children have to be fed a hot meal. And that's a non-negotiable in most circumstances. We'll come on to kind of caveats later on, but essentially, if you're running a happy camp activity or a HAF activity, you need to make sure that children are going to have access to a hot meal at every single opportunity that they're with you. We want children to be more active. We want them to take part in activities that are going to build their character, develop their resilience, and kind of support their whole wider educational attainment. And we'll touch on enrichment activities later on. But this is talking about that kind of holistic side, the things that make children, develop them as a person, and, you know, get them to kind of understand all those moral values and ethical values that they learn as they grow up. It's important that the activities you offer are kind of embracing those values. We want children to be safe as well as not socially isolated. Unfortunately, lots of children are coming from backgrounds where things at home aren't very pleasant all of the time. And I think we've seen over the last summer, more than ever, the kind of phone calls that we get as a coordination team are very much erring on safeguarding and holistic support that the family needs, and signposting to services. So this isn't just about getting kids out of the house and keeping them moving. This is in lots of circumstances giving them a safe haven to go to for a few hours a day while things at home perhaps aren't as good as they should be. We want children and families to come away with a greater knowledge of health and nutrition. And when we talk about this, this is all encompassing. So it isn't just about how they're fueling their bodies. This is about understanding the pros and cons of eating certain food. It also extends now into understanding about budgeting. And there's a mention in there about how the families, we want them to understand how to cook recipes for low cost, how to access food banks, how to obtain support and help from all of those services that are sitting around them that perhaps they don't always have the social capital to know how to go out and find. So that health and nutrition element is something that we've worked really hard to grow this year, and we work alongside an organisation called Busybodies, who are commissioned through Herts County Council to work with families, first and foremost around obesity, but given the work they've done with us, it's also around when there's food poverty in the home, and how families can make the most of what they've got to ensure that children's tummies are full enough. We want them to be more engaged with school and other services, and one of the ways that we do that is to try to encourage schools to open their doors to act as a host venue for a lot of these camps. It's a location that children are familiar with, it's comfortable to them, very often it's on their doorstep. And if they can feel comfortable approaching school during the holiday times, we know that it has a knock-on effect when they go back, because they've kept that routine and that consistency. And in starting to speak to head teachers, they recognise which of their children have been taking part in activities over the summer holidays or over the Easter holidays, and the impact it's had when they come back to school. In addition to that, we are, as I mentioned earlier, trying to make sure that we signpost families to other information and support. And an example of that is us as professionals starting to make referrals to the likes of Families First, who, if you don't know, are like a family it's a family support service across Hertfordshire. So they support the whole family, they support the child, they work with perpetrators of domestic violence, they work in non-attendance, they work in kind of bullying, mental health. It's kind of a one-stop shop for families to be able to go to get the start of support. And we have worked, I would say, more closely with Families First over the last 6 weeks than we have in a long time, because of the way that families are presented now. So the specification, what is it that we're asking Happy Camp providers to do? So we need to provide opportunities for children who are school aged and have completed at least a year of reception up to year 11. So children that are 4 years old can come into camps, and some of our camps do go as young as that, as long as they have completed a year of reception. It's really important that they've already kind of been exposed to that group experience and that environment that school gives them. And first and foremost, children need to be eligible for benefits related free school meals. That differs from the universal infant free school meal offer, which is where every child across the country is eligible for free school meals up to the age of year 2. So we quite often get families saying, but my child gets free school meals and they're in year 1 at school. Brilliant, but that's not the right kind of free school meal we're looking for. And so what we do is encourage families to apply to receive free school meals, even though they're getting them already, because the school will then get additional funding to support that child under what's called the pupil premium. So it's important that there's that kind of understanding, both for providers and for parents. We need people to run activities through Easter, summer and Christmas, and that can be anything from 1 day to, we go up to 16 days in the summer. We've got 7 days over the Christmas holidays. There is no obligation for you to do the maximum amount. Some providers run 1 day and that's it. Some run the whole time, and that's fantastic. So it's a real transient model depending on who's delivering. Camps have to run for at least 4 hours per day. Some go more than that, where we've got private providers that perhaps have a 6-hour offer already and they're applying for funding to support extra free spaces alongside that. They perhaps underpin the cost of those additional 2 hours, but we will fund 4 hours of activity per day. Within that 4-hour setup, there must be at least an hour of sport or physical activity, at least an hour of that enrichment type stuff, and a hot meal. All of the places have to be listed on what's called Playways, and Playways is a central booking platform that we've worked over the last couple of years to improve and develop to make sure that it meets the needs of providers as much as possible, with respect to being a one-stop shop where parents can search activities and book them and see all of the opportunities available, but also to be able to gather as much information on a booking form. So you'll see that when parents fill it in, they are asked questions about children's medical needs, their dietary requirements, their emergency contact details, ways that camps can further support them if they've got additional needs. And I think we've got to a point now where there is more than enough information that is made available to providers, so that when children come to you, you should have a really good picture of who it is that's going to walk through the door. Across the year, we were aiming to offer 66,000 mainstream places, and that's chopped up into summer Easter, summer and summer Christmas, plus an additional 4,500 SEND places, so special educational needs and disabilities. We wanted 4,500 specific spaces for those children. So we were looking at really having high quality over quantity, and that each camp provider is therefore capped at a maximum of 40 places per day. For winter, bearing in mind that we've had 2 delivery phases, we're looking to offer 9,000 places, and that will just be 9,000 chipped off of that total. Our biggest cohort has been summer. We had a smaller amount at Easter. We only have 7 days available to us in the winter, so the number is a little bit smaller again. So what does delivery look like? If you're thinking of putting an application in, you can apply for a grant of between £20 and £30 per child per day, and that must include the cost of food. So if you're going to run a camp where you've got 20 children are coming along for the day, that gives you a budget of £600 per day as a maximum. And out of that must come your venue hire, your coaching costs, your food, your resources, everything that has to create that camp must come out of that amount of money. And depending how resourceful you are, that's quite a lot of money to play with. In other parts of the country, you'll find that the maximum that is being offered is anything between sort of 10 and 15. In some areas, it's even less than that. So £30, you can do a lot with £30 per child per day. If you're working with SEND children, or if you are running a SEND specific camp, there isn't a cap on the price per child per day within reason. The reason for that is that we have spoken to SEND providers who have said, with the best will in the world, 30 quid a day is just not enough to work with SEND children. We need additional resource, we need additional staff, we need additional equipment, we need to think about the structure of the room, the groups need to be smaller. You can't do that on £30. But it's really, really vital that providers feel, if they're going to apply down that route, that they are ready to accept SEND children. We've had providers in the past that are mainstream through and through, and I've kind of said, we give it a go. We'll see if we can provide some SEND places. And you can see that they're not quite equipped. So anybody is welcome to apply for that, but we will ask to see some real evidence that SEND is what you're good at and that you can provide a quality offer to those children. In addition to that, you can ask for extra funding for one-to-one provision. If you're running a mainstream camp and you've got a one-to-one child that comes along and you know that you can support them, but they might need a one-to-one, they might need a little bit of extra help, you can speak to Nikki and Emma and the rest of their team about how you can go about paying additional staffing costs to have an extra person in. As I said earlier, you can run for a minimum of 1 day up to a maximum of 7 days of delivery over winter. And you can actually consider running one mass event to bring the community in. And it might be something like a winter wonderland or a circus skills event, as we've seen in the past. One of our providers has around about 150 children come along and they do a whole day of different activities. When you're running a mass event, it's really important to work out your numbers. You need to make sure that the amount you're applying for is going to be enough to cover what your plans are, but equally don't apply for so much that you can't make the kids get there. You know, 150 children equals an awful lot of money. Don't up the numbers just so you can afford what you want to do. It's a bit of a balancing act. And then based on parent feedback and what we've seen, some of those really specialist camps work brilliantly. Dance camps are fantastic. Sport specific camps are fantastic. I think when you see a camp that is advertised as being a bit multi-sports, they're kind of 10 a penny. And parents don't know what they're getting. Whereas if you're a specific type of activity, they tend to work really, really well. The timeline for winter is that applications have already opened on the 23rd of August and they close at midnight on the 19th of September. So you've got a good kind of 4 or 5 week period to make an application. On the 21st of October, all of the papers will be assessed by a panel. And when we say assessed, we're looking at where have you said you're going to run your camp, how many children for, what have you taken into account, what does your camp look like? And based on that assessment procedure, you will then either be awarded with funding or not, or perhaps asked a few questions about what you could tweak to make your application a little bit more appealing. A decision will be shared with applicants on the 4th of November. And a week later, you'll then have a session which is mandatory for everybody to attend with Playways, and they will teach you how to put your activities up on the platform and how to make the most out of that platform so that you can market appropriately, you can gauge your participants, you know who's coming, you can make sure that your spaces are advertised as well as possible. And then on the 21st of November, the bookings open. So that time in between the 10th and the 21st is a window where you upload your activities. At the end of that period, we sit and check through every single listing on Playways. So it's really, really vital that 1, you put as much information as possible, and 2, you stick to whatever deadlines we need to share with you. And there's a good chance that you'll get maybe from, say, the 10th until perhaps the 17th or 18th. And then it gives us a few days to check and make sure that when the bookings go live, everything is as good as it needs to be, and you're not going to miss out on that swell of traffic that comes to book camps. And then on the 22nd of November through to the 4th of January is when you guys will be delivering. The morning of the 21st of November, I'll give you an idea. So over the summer, we had up to about 39,000 places available at the point of bookings opening. On that first day, 14,500 bookings were made. That is the time when people are sitting and waiting to make that booking. And that's why that little bit beforehand is so critical around making sure everything's as good as it can be, making sure you know how to describe your camp, you've got some good images, you've got a really clear description around where the location is and how people can find you. That is you selling yourself. So for those of you that are new to this or have never ever run a camp before, there's a couple of examples here of what camps could look like. So this is an average football camp that's for children aged 5 to 11 and it's at a local sports venue. Children might be arriving at 10, they'll arrive, they'll do their registration and there might be some icebreaker games or kind of a soft start going on in the background. And then between 10:15 and 11:15 is going to be their first sports session. So it will be some structured skills and drills games and then they'll have a little bit of a water break. For the next hour, they then might do a craft session. And in this example, perhaps they'll be designing some football boot magnets or painting a t-shirt, followed by lunch. Lunch, we will talk to you a little bit later about how you can get your catering in, but essentially every provider is responsible for sourcing their food. That doesn't mean you have to cook it. And that doesn't mean you need a kitchen at your venue. What it means is speak to a local caterer, speak to a kitchen, speak to a restaurant, speak to a bar, see if there's something they can do to make sure that you can have appropriate food at your camp location. It's worked like this for the last year, and there are some incredible caterers out there now, bars and restaurants and local food providers that understand what this is all about and have built some fantastic relationships up and are quite happy to be involved in the program. To give a couple of examples, I don't know where people are from, but you've got Bebo that have got branches in Hatfield and Welling and Hertford. They've become a really good caterer for us. The Tapas Bar in Stevenage Old Town that have also now got the George up at Gravely near Stevenage. They're a brilliant food provider. There's also some mass caterers, so the likes of Hearts Independent Living, we've worked with them before. So there are a number of caterers that you can contact. For the following 45 minutes, those children might be taking part in another quick small-sided game before they go home for the day, but they have ticked off that they've done some sport, they've had their hot food, and they've done some of that enrichment type activity. A different example might be for some older children. So you'll see that this camp is held at a theatre space, and this is actually, I've nicked this from Southern Maltings over at Ware. So if anybody knows that building, it's a beautiful old building, and it's a fantastic performance space. And they run a camp called Craft and Create, and it's for slightly older children. So they start it later in the day. Their camp runs from 2 till 6, and the meal the children are given is dinner. And on this occasion, they've got a lovely outdoor garden. So as part of that soft start, the children might be coming in and perhaps outside just drawing with some chalk and drawing on the floor and drawing on the walls. It's all things that can be washed off, but it's something they can come in and get on with, and without feeling like they're kind of being ignored or, they're not included. It's just a nice way for them to come in. As they're older children, they might then work on some team building games. Human knot, if nobody's ever played it before, it's this thing where you hold hands in a long line and then you spin round and round and round and hold hands and you have to get yourself undone. And then silent line up is you'll give your children a task and say, right, you need to put yourself in a line based on your date of birth, but you have to do it without talking to each other. And it's trying to get children to just work on their communication skills, which is perhaps more appropriate for older children. They then might have a craft session. And on this occasion, the theme is Mexico. So they're going to create some Mexican masks and some piñatas, talking about Aztec culture, and then perhaps making and playing some maracas. Their dinner for this course, for this program, is that they're going to make their own fajitas. I know that this space has got a kitchen, so they got the opportunity to talk about food, and that's bringing in that nutritional element, talk about food, having the opportunity to cook and practice cutting skills and understanding all of the different elements that make up a meal. And then at the end of that, I think with all children, it's a great idea to sit and have like a reflection piece. And this can be children talking about what they've learned, what they'd like to learn, what they've enjoyed the most, but it's also a great way for you to get feedback. And if you're running a camp over a prolonged period, to have the chance to take that feedback away, think about how you might need to change or improve your camp, and then come back again with some new ideas, and then the children can be collected at 6 o'clock. So it's just a couple of examples of how we've seen camps run. I'm going to hand over to Nikki now to talk about completing the application form.
Thanks, Shelley. Yes, so application forms. We do have 2 application forms. We have one for new providers and we have one for existing providers. So for new providers, that's a slightly longer application process. And the reason for that is obviously you're new to us as an organisation and we need to do some additional kind of due diligence checks. So that's looking at your organisation, understanding how you're formed, if you're a charity, going onto charity website, company, having a look online at your accounts, etc. And going through all of the policies that we require you to submit as part of the programme. So that's part of the element. So it is a slightly longer process, but for those of you who then come into the programme, the next time you apply, if you successfully get through the Christmas programme, then you will be able to access the shorter application process for any future programmes that you want to apply for. We ask you things around telling us about your organisation, just so we can get to know you, not just what you've delivered that's relevant, but perhaps kind of the bigger aims and objectives of your organisation as well. And then it's really important for us that we understand that you are going to meet all of the requirements of the programme, so all of the physical activity, enrichment, nutrition and food elements. And so the application is your opportunity to explain to us what activities you're going to deliver. And certainly one of the things that we normally find is that actually nutritional education is one of the things that perhaps on a first application providers struggle with, telling us what it is they're going to be doing to support that element. So please do talk to us, have a look online. There are resources that are available also on the Heart Sports Partnership website that can help you with the development of that programme. And I know Shelley will definitely support me when I say we are here throughout this process to answer any questions that you have. So if it's about the application process, or you want to talk through an idea for an activity, or perhaps you are a physical activity provider and you need to find somebody perhaps to partner with to deliver the enrichment, then yes, there are resources available online, but we are here to talk to you. So please do not hesitate to send us an email or give us a call so that we can go through that process with you. Certainly, I would encourage all of you to look at the guidance notes which are available online. And if you don't have them, I can always send them over to you. Just drop us a note in the comments here. But that gives you a really good overview of the programme. And if you read nothing else, read the first page of those guidance notes, which gives kind of a real short breakdown of what we're looking for at this point, how many places, etc. And also review the assessment criteria as well. And the reason why that's important is because it will help you to understand what we're looking for when we're assessing each of the applications that we have through. So we do have a lot of applications. We're very lucky now to have been running the programme for quite a while now. We have a lot of providers that have delivered with us for an ongoing period, but we do with each round have lots of new providers, and we're really keen to develop that offer moving forward. So you as new providers, we'd love to have a chat with you and talk through your programmes. And I would definitely encourage you to have a chat with us before you put pen to paper, just so that we can answer any queries you have, and we'll just be very, very open about where we're at, the requirements, and making sure that what you're thinking about planning is going to be fitting with the criteria that we have. What I would say is, again, we do have providers that deliver on a kind of a national level or a large level. They're part perhaps of a franchise business, and that's absolutely fine, and that's a very important part of the programme. But what I do think it's really important to stress is that we do prioritise funding for Hertfordshire based groups. So for those groups, they're providers that are either already delivering in Hertfordshire, delivering currently, or perhaps they have delivered previously in Hertfordshire. We will consider applications from providers who have never delivered in Hertfordshire before, but those applications in particular really need to show that they meet the other criteria of the programme. And actually, we will only consider them if we have an unmet need for places. So we have a target of 9,000 places, and if we're in a position where actually we're not able to provide all of those places for whatever reason, we don't meet that target, then we will consider the application at that point. So certainly, if you are a provider that has no experience, no history within Hertfordshire, then please do talk to me about that, and we can go through everything with you. I'm working with my colleague Emma, who'd said hello previously to you at the start of the application. So we had over 80 applications, so 80 different organisations, charities, businesses and sole traders that applied for the summer programme. So that's a huge process to support those providers through the application process. Once those applications have been submitted, the deadline has passed, then really our jobs kind of kick off. And so Emma and I will be assessing those applications according to the guidelines. We will then be supporting the panel in making their decisions. We'll make recommendations. Obviously, then the panel will make their decision, and we will then let you as providers know whether or not you've been successful. And then we're responsible then for making sure we have all the documentation that we need from you as a provider in order for us to be able to then process your grant payment. Once the grant payments have been made, as Shelley was saying, it might be the case that, going through your registers, you see that you've got a lot of children with SEND needs, for example. And so you might come back to us and we might have a conversation about freeing up some additional funding to enable you to provide one-to-one support. And then the next time, really, our big piece of work then is the monitoring and evaluation. So as part of the grant process, at the end of delivery, when you finish delivering your program, you will then complete, which is standard with all kind of grant funding programs, a monitoring form which tells us about how many people have attended the program and feedback, hopefully from those who've taken part, perhaps family members, and also give us an update on the budget and spend. Is there any money left at the end of the program? Have you spent it all? Those kinds of things. So that helps us to evaluate the program. What I would say about the application form is there are two things. So one is, please do make sure that you, I've already mentioned it, but the nutritional education, please do make sure that you refer to that. Also, please do check your budget. So it's really important that we have a really clear idea of not just the amount that you're requesting as funding and how that's broken down as price per head per child attending, but also that we can see how you're allocating that money as well. And certainly we would expect to see in that, you can make an allocation for administration, because as Shelley was explaining, we do have the Playway system. So there will be administration getting that program up online. There'll also be the follow-up with those families perhaps who, before they're attending, to check that you understand any SEND needs, for example, or perhaps you have people that aren't attending, haven't attended a session, so you'll be following up with them to say, hi, is everything okay? Do you need any support? How can we encourage you to come to the next session? So there is administration, so it's fine to add an administration fee to that budget as well, but please do make sure it adds up. That would be super helpful. Shelley, do you want me to talk about training now, or do you want me to hold off on that? So the other part of our responsibility and what we deliver as part of the programme is the training programme. So the training programme is an amazing free programme that all successful happy providers, when you get through through the round, are able to access. And so we do have some mandatory requirements as part of the programme. So for example, everybody that's delivering in camp, any camp, must have received safeguarding training, and that's that's just a given. So we need to check that you provide us with the right information to show that that's the case, that your team have got that. Some of your team, all of your team, or some of them at least, will need to have first aid training. So again, depending on your ratios and number of children, we need to make sure we've got the right amount of first aid trained staff in place. And then also with food hygiene, because you're dealing with food, even if you're literally, your team are putting a plate of food down in front of a child, they are obviously in contact with that food. And so we need to ensure that those staff members have food hygiene training as well. So we know that that's a big ask. And so in order to help make sure that all of our providers are able to meet that requirement, we do have a free training program that you can sign up, that your staff can sign up to take part in. We do have an offer of online and in-person training, and currently we're doing a training needs analysis with our previous cohort of providers over the summer period, so that we can look to develop that programme. We don't just offer mandatory courses that we've just talked about, we also offer a range of other programmes. So some of the things that we offered were food allergens. There was a few different sessions around SEND needs, so ADHD awareness, for example. We have health and safety training. We had a few different types of programs around mental health. And so we really do try and offer an opportunity for CPD for your staff as well. So we do encourage the team to take part in that. Most of those courses are not mandatory, but it's a great opportunity for your team to be upskilled and to make connections as well, networking with the other providers, other people who are going to be delivering in camp as well. So myself and Emma, mainly Emma, bless her, will be administrating that programme. So we'll be helping, supporting you with the bookings, any queries that come up, and making sure that you get all your certificates at the end of that programme as well. Thank you, Shelley.
Fantastic, cheers, thank you very much. Okay, so Mapping and insight. As we said earlier on, we are hoping to provide camps for children that are living in the hardest parts of the county. So you will find on our website, where you find all of the links to the application and that kind of stuff, a series of maps. Now, depending on where it is in the county that you want to deliver, your map will look slightly different. I'll just talk you through what we've got. So this is a map of decorum. The black line is the outside boundary of what we consider to be decorum, or what Herts County Council considers to be decorum. Within that, you've got a number of coloured patches. As a rule, the darker the patch, the higher number of free school meal children there are living there. So if you look at the key that's down here on the left, if it's lovely and green, there's roughly between 0 to 12 children on free school meals living there. When we go down to that dark purpley brown colour, anywhere between 80 and 354. Now, they're quite broad numbers, but it's still a pretty good indication that in these areas, in central Hemel Hempstead, over here in Tring, down in Kings Langley, there are high numbers of free school meal children living. This information is taken partly from census, partly from free school meal applications, lots of information tied together, so we can tell that it's pretty accurate. What that means is, if you apply to run a camp and you want to stick it here over near Little Gadsden, we'll refer back to these maps using the postcode and think there's not an awful lot of chance that we're going to need a camp in that area. If you decide you want to apply to run a camp and it's in one of these hotspot areas, fantastic. One, you're on the right track, but two, we'll then use that information to see, well, have we got any other 5 to 11 camps, 8 to 11 camps, 12 to 16, and that helps make sure that we've got an even spread where there shouldn't be too much competition. So it's really, really, really important that you look at that insight and that you take into account where you want to run your activities. The caveat to that is that depending on what your activity is, your venue might be a fixed venue. You may have a fencing centre, you may have a ski slope, you may have a something that's not movable. In that instance, you'll need to be able to demonstrate that you can attract the right type of children to your venue. And if it is a super rural location, how are kids going to get there? If it's not in walking distance, there's a good chance they haven't got cars, they can't afford public transport. There needs to be some justification around that. In addition, there's a really good website which is called School Dash, and it gives you all sorts of information about the children attending schools, the numbers of free school meals. The reason we're pointing this out is that if you're looking at a school to be a venue, we encourage you to look at schools that have already got a high number of free school meal children attending, because then you've got a captive audience, and that kind of information is available on the school dashboard. One of the things that we often get asked to do, but we can't possibly share, is who else is applying in the area. We know we'll get the applications in, but until they're assessed and we know who's successful, we can't credibly give you information around how many other camps there are locally. Similarly, we can't tell you where we need camps, because until we get all the applications in, we might have told you somewhere, but there are camps in that place anyway. So it's really useful for you to understand from the get-go, we can't tell you where to run camps. We can't tell you what age group to run. We can't tell you what it is we're looking for. All we can do is share this sort of information, and then as we get further down the line, flag up to certain providers, if you're able to offer extra spaces, we've noticed a need here. So for example, over the summer holidays, we really struggle generally to have any kind of provision around the Bishop Stortford, Sawbridgeworth, Royston, that kind of top of the A10 corridor and over to East Herts. It's somewhere that we always struggle. When you look on a heat map, there are not high numbers of free school meal children living there, but Leventhorpe as a secondary school has got a huge number of free school meal children. And it's just something that we haven't tackled. So when we've got insight like that, we'll share it with you. But as a rule, it's really important that you make sure you make the most of this data and understand where it is that you're putting your camps. Marketing, we never used to touch on this too much, but it's really important that we do share it. Marketing your camps. So how are the camps marketed? As part of the coordination team, we do an enormous amount of county-wide marketing. And that is first and foremost through schools. We do a lot of social media. We have printed material that goes out here, there and everywhere, food banks, libraries, schools, all sorts of places. A lot of professional referrals. So we work with a number of additional agencies like Families First, like the schools, family support services, domestic violence refuges, food bank, all of those kind of places that refer children in, and obviously word of mouth. there is still an expectation that every provider also promotes their own camps locally. There's a reason that you've chosen to put that camp in that area. So as part of it, we expect you to know the area to the extent where you know where to market. There's lots of ways to do it, including Facebook groups, speaking to local schools, community groups, and your existing memberships where you may have children that fit the bill that might want to come along to your camp. We emphasize this every single delivery period, and every single time we see certain providers that kind of just and hope that everyone else is going to do it, and that can't carry on. We need to have providers that are going to market the camps themselves. We try to support you as much as possible. So there are pre-templated social media assets or pictures that you can use for Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. They're editable to a point, so you can put your own text, your own photos, but the logos and the colours tend to be set so that we keep some brand recognition. And then we also give you templates to use on Playways, because you'll find that when you set up your account, there'll be spaces for you to put little pictures and little banners that help promote your activity. All of that is available for you to use for free. All you need to do is set up an account on a piece of software called Canva, which again is free, but it just means that you can drag those things off and tweak about with them. But we can't emphasize enough the need to market, and we will be asking what your intentions are when it comes to marketing. Also, who is coming to camp? We've talked about children who are receiving free school meals, but there are additional children who are eligible to attend, even if they don't meet that free school meal criteria. So if you run a camp, you can expect one of every type of kiddie to be coming along. There will be children that have been assessed by the local authority as being in need. Perhaps these are children where there's been safeguarding issues raised at home, and the social worker feels that it's appropriate for them to be in a safe space over the holidays. We will have young carers coming along, children that are just looking for a little bit of respite and need a little bit of time out to be children. We work with a lot of looked after children, so children that are in foster care or children that are transitioning from care homes into foster care. We work with children and parents and families where an EHCP, so an educational healthcare plan, is in place. These are generally children with additional needs and are probably in special schools and have got SENCOs. This is the need for our SEND camps to be in place and to have a lot of experienced expertise in the staff that run them. Children that have got low attendance at school or at risk of exclusion, so perhaps there are that multiple non-attendance truancy issues, and we're trying to find some kind of routine for these children to come into activities that will then impact on their school attendance. Generally, children that are living in high areas of deprivation, we have seen a huge number of parents coming to us requesting codes for their children. I'll explain the code bit in a minute, but coming to us to request codes so their children can join, because the cost of living crisis is having an enormous sort of impact on their home families. Children that are in transition phases, so perhaps children have moved out of the area or into the area and they are struggling between that primary and secondary or nursery and primary transition. And then migrant, refugee and asylum seekers. We had an enormous number of Ukrainian children attending our camps, which is fantastic. It brought various challenges around language barriers and an understanding of English ways of behaving and things that are acceptable and not, but increasingly, I think we're going to see a high number of Ukrainian children that come into camps as well. I'll just go back to the codes. So the codes are sense checked to make sure that children who come to the camps are eligible. So we send, the Herts County Council sends codes out to every school across the county. The school then shares that code with every family that's eligible. The family can then use the code to make a booking. So as much as possible from the beginning, we're making sure that the children that book are the eligible children. So when we talk about codes being shared, and you'll hear this as you go on, where's the code? What's the code that we put in? Where do I get the code from? The code is their passport to be able to book a space on the camps. And when we talk about sharing codes, it's not something that we give you guys as providers to share. We share them as professionals with other people that can make referrals, but that's essentially what the codes are all about. Your HAF teams are not me. So Orla, Lindsay, Joe, and there's another young lady, Louise, that's going to be joining Herts Sports Partnership soon from the partnership side. And then at Herts Community Foundation, you've got Nikki and Emma that are on the call, but also Maureen and Helen. The reason my name isn't on there, none of you guys probably will know me, but I'm leaving my role at the end of September. So it used to say Shelley, but now it says Louise. So somebody else will be there to support. But I'm here throughout your application process. So if there's any questions, you'll certainly be able to speak to me before then. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now because I'm wondering if anybody has got any questions. Or nobody has any questions. That must have been very clear. Jim, you're the only face I can see. Have you got a question?
Yes, I've got a question.
Yeah.
We've got to hear about this through Expressions Academy, who've done some courses, and we're a church who, and I know that it's the thing is not going to be religious. It's just a camp for children. And we've been trying to get the local community to come and use. We've got premises, we've got a kitchen, we've got a big hall, we've got loads of toys, loads of games, things like that. So we want to get them to use it. So one thing is, my question really is it only for people who are on the program, or can we extend it to the community?
You can extend it to the community as long, well, there's various ways of doing it. We get some providers that already run something and parents pay a contribution, whether it's £5, £25, whatever. And what they're doing is applying for a grant to offer some extra spaces. So you might be already as a church running something that allows 15 kids a day to come along, and you want to apply for a grant that enables another 5 children per day to come along. And you can absolutely do that. And we encourage it because those providers that already have that structure in place know what they're doing. Camps aren't new to them, so they know already how to kind of manage those groups of children. You can't use this funding to open it to the community because of that set criteria. So if you've got community members that are coming and they pay alongside free places, great. Use the funding for everybody. We can't do that. It's got to be just for those ring-fenced children.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it'd be difficult to organise. I'm just trying to think of, but yeah, it does answer my question. Yes, thank you.
Do you do something already? A campsite?
We have a primary school club on a Thursday evening. It's for primary school, but we want to encourage teenagers. We think there's not much provision for teenagers. We did an event at the end of May, where we wanted about 50 or 25 teenagers from different schools in the area. There's 3 secondary schools, all within a sort of 15-20 minute walking distance. Okay. I know a bit more than that, I suppose, from where we are, and we just want to get those kids to come along and use the facilities and get out into the community. So we've done something recently, like a holiday club, and again, just go out to the community. So we do have contacts there, and the reason I asked about whether just the children from the schools aren't through playways can be there, or others, is we might want to say it's going on. You can come along as well.
Yeah.
How we'd organise that.
Yeah. I mean, whereabouts are you? Where in Herts are you?
Hemel Hempstead.
Okay. I mean, in that instance, you might want to trial something like that mass community event where you've got funding and you know that with the money you've got, you can attract 30 kids that fit the criteria from the local area, but that money will enable you to make it open to the wider community. So it's almost a bonus that you've got more children come in. There's nothing wrong in you doing that. Or you might decide you want to break the funding down and, depending on how you want to work with the camps, if you've got older children, you can run a camp that's for older kids and a camp that's for younger kids. And perhaps you alternate your days, or you do something in the morning for the littlies and something in the afternoon for the older children. There's lots and lots of ways that you can kind of work the two together. But yeah, essentially you can include the whole community. It's just which bits of the community you're applying for funding for.
And Jim, sorry, you did say that you had contacts, I think, with 4 schools. So again, you can have a little look online, see how many free school meal children are at those schools. We do have quite a high need in that area. So you may well find actually that will be opening up to your community.
Yeah, I would expect where we are, there's it's not a wealthy area. I expect there'll be a few there. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Has anyone else got any other questions? No. Okay. Has anybody who's on the call worked with HAF but in different parts of the country before?
Hi, I'm Neil. Sorry, I have not worked with you before, but I do have a question. I'm planning on running my camps split. So I would like to do a morning with the end of lunch and then an afternoon starting with lunch. Do they have to be different age groups, or do you just run a morning of reception age children up to year 6 and then the afternoon of reception age children up to year 6? Or would you prefer to see reception 4 years to 11 years and then 12 years up to 15 years in the afternoon, for example?
It's entirely up to you. What I would say is because children can come to, we limit it that they can come to 1 camp a day. So as long as in the way you structure it, you can be sure that, say you run from 9 till 1 and then you overlap going from 12 till 4, which is what some camps do. What we don't want is the kiddie that's 6 years old coming at 9 and leaving at 4.
Yeah, sure.
Because then they've overlap camps, and there are things on the booking system that prevent that clash. So if a parent has booked a child onto a camp before and they already exist on Playways, if they try to book your morning and then book your afternoon, it will recognise there's a clash. Mm-hmm. If it's somebody that's never ever used Playways before and they're booking for the first time, that pre-existence doesn't count. So the system won't recognise that they already, hang on a minute, you're doing something already on this day. So yes, you can do that, and yes, you can mix the ages up how you want. And in some instances, one of our gymnastic camps in the morning might say we're going to have 30 places from 9 till 1, and we're going to have 15 6 to 8 year olds and 15 9 to 12 year olds, and then we're going to repeat that in the afternoon, and everybody crosses over for lunch. It's just another way of doing it. The obligation is on that provider to make sure that there are no duplicate bookings, and that's why it's important to keep an eye on Playways. As soon as you see your bookings coming in and you realise that Molly's mum's managed to book her on in the morning and the afternoon, Molly's mum needs a phone call to say, oh, you might have made a mistake, which, you know. Yeah.
And Molly's moaning that it's all the same.
Exactly.
The other question I had was about budgeting. So obviously, you know, let's say we're aiming for £25 per child. What are you looking for? Are you trying to look for the outgoings, the income to kind of like match exactly kind of thing? Or is there leeway for a particular profit margin, or how do you look at that?
It's charitable funding, so you cannot make a profit on charitable funds. So what you're saying you're going to spend, and you're going to break even at the end of the day. If there is an amount of money that you don't spend for whatever reason, perhaps actually something you were purchasing as materials was cheaper than you thought, then that money should be returned, because it is government funding essentially. So as you say, if you decide it's £25 per head and you're having 20 children, then essentially the funding you're asking for is 25 times 20. That's your total. And then you'll show me how that's broken down. So actually we're going to spend that money on this, and this, and that shows you that I'm going to come to a zero balance at the end of the spend. But we do realise as well that budgets are a best guess, because you're planning this and things do change slightly. So just have a conversation with us throughout, you know, if things change. And if I can just go back to your first point, your first question as well, I think it comes down to differentiation. It's how confident you are in being able to support the age range and mix of children that you have at your site. And as long as those children, you know, there is different stuff for your younger children as opposed to your older children, so that they're getting the very best experience, it's something that meets their kind of age and ability, then that's absolutely fine. So I think it's kind of based on that really, as well from your perspective.
Yeah,
no, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, because I haven't paid myself at all for this. I didn't consider myself in any of the costings. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no, you do need to think about it in the administration and things as well. We don't want anyone to come out of this making a loss.
Yeah.
You do need to think through all of the different, you know, criteria and then come up with an amount that you feel as appropriate. Okay. If anything did go massively wrong and for whatever reason you'd massively miscalculated, we would expect, you know, have a chat with us. We do understand, and of course we want everybody to have a really positive experience and our children to get the best experience. We don't want people cutting corners slightly because they get, oh gosh, now I'm making a loss. Like, talk to us, we're here, that's what our jobs are, we're happy to help.
Okay, and then I'm fine just to email on the email address that was in the previous slide, because I'd love to have a one-to-one conversation before I submit my application.
Yeah, please do contact us. Very happy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. Great presentation.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, any more questions? Victoria, I've got a feeling you're Camp Beaumont. I think I replied to an email from you.
Yes, sorry, I'm not able to turn on my camera right now, but I do actually have a question. So regarding if is the full funding based off how many offers of children on the front end, or does it change based off attendance? If we have like 20 children expected to come, but then 15 come, does that change the funding amount?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So we understand that, you know, even if you are planning for 20 children a day to attend and actually at 10 attend, then we realize that you're still going to have some costs that do not change regardless. You're still going to have the staffing levels, you've planned accordingly for that. You're still invested in some materials beforehand because, again, you're planning for those numbers. So when we're talking about money to return, we're not going to be saying, okay, well, you've had 50% of attendance, what you said would, number of people you said would attend, so you're going to have to return 50% of the funding. It doesn't work like that. We are flexible. We do understand. We were all delivery partners ourselves previously, perhaps in other guises, we understand how that works, but we do expect to see a proper breakdown of how that money is spent. And also at the end of each program, we are going to be kind of probably looking at a small percentage of each of the groups. We'll kind of ask just to show kind of receipts and stuff of spend as well, and look at the showing that money's gone out of the accounts. But we do realise that even if you have less people attending, what we would expect in that instance is that you're really proactive. So I would expect that you're in touch with the HSP team and you're saying to them, you know what, look, when our bookings aren't where we thought there would be, what can we do to address this? We've done this with marketing. Is there anything else that perhaps you can recommend that we can try? You might look at them and think, do you know what, actually, we've only got 2 children attending on the Wednesday. So why don't we try speak to the parents and move them to another day, and we'll cancel that day, fund that day of delivery. So it's about being proactive and sensible, but we're not looking to claw back every single penny, because that's just not the reality with the program that we're delivering.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? If you find that you've got questions once you get going, like we said, just feel free to get in touch. Anything that's more kind of money related, definitely send that Nikki's way. If you're curious about our sort of coordination knowledge of what might be happening elsewhere, then give the HSP team a call and we'll be able to give you an idea. But generally, if there's a question that one or other of us can't answer, we'll kind of send you in the other direction. But know that Nikki's team and our team do work incredibly closely together. All of the information is shared. The answer that you'll get from one will be, you know, the same as that you'll get from the other. We catch up weekly to make sure that we keep on top of everything. So you're definitely in really, really safe hands. And if there's nothing else, then good luck, I guess. Make sure you have a look at the website, make sure you've got all of the information, check those maps, make sure you're familiar with the area that you want to deliver in, and you've got until midnight on the 19th of September.
Thanks, everyone.
No worries. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.